Hi everyone, it is Carrie. Welcome to my channel. I'm finally making this video and I was a little over ambitious. I thought I was gonna read a lot more so I could talk about some new Korean authors, but it turns out I'm just going to be blathering on about my faves again with a couple new additions. What is this video about? This video is about Korean authors' work that has been translated from Korean. So I think that when I was thinking about making this video, I was writing down all of these authors and I realized a lot of them were actually Korean American or having written their book originally in English. And I think that the subject matter is very interestingly very different. And so I wanted in this video to focus on authors who write in Korean and have their work translated. But before we dive into the list, I do want to give a shout out to the sponsor of this video, which is Surfshark VPN. You guys probably already know what a VPN is. It is a virtual private network, and it essentially protects your identity, your data, when you are browsing online. So for me, I most often use it to switch my location. So on Surfshark, it's really easy. You just log on and you can choose what country you would like to be browsing from. So especially with Netflix or anything like that, if you want to access a different library, or the Korean government loves to block you from looking at certain websites if you're outside of Korea. So when I have to do like visa stuff, I have to make sure that I'm in Korea to do it, kind of thing. Surfshark makes it really easy, and it also just protects your data. So if you are using like public Wi-Fi or something like that, someone can easily hack into that and get your data. But if you're using a VPN, it actually encrypts and protects you. So overall, like no matter what you want to use it for, it's very helpful, especially if you are interested in Korean literature, and usually if you're interested in the literature, you're also interested in other forms of media. So if you're interested in Korean film or Korean dramas or anything, the Netflix library in Korea is filled with them. So definitely use that and browse the Korean Netflix, I'm just saying. And so if you would like to try Surfshark VPN, you can use the code CARICANREAD to get 83% off of your order, but also it gives you 3 months extra free. So it's a really great deal. There's also a 30-day no questions asked, all money back guarantee. So literally just try it out, see how you feel, and all that information will be in the description box. Highly recommend. Thank you, Surfshark, so much. I talk more about film, I think, on my main channel, which is Carrie Cakes, which will also be linked down below. So if you want some Korean film that you could try and check out using the VPN, I got you over there. So thank you again to Surfshark. Information will be down below. Check them out. So now we're just going to dive straight into this list, and I'm going to start with my personal favorite author. And I am so incredibly frustrated because I know I have the physical copy of this book and I would not sell it. A couple of these that are on the list I was looking for and I realized I sold them in my book sale. Oops. But this book I would not sell. So I don't know where it is, but it is one of my favorite books. The book is by the author Kimyongha, and he's so interesting because he writes so many different things. I think that's why I tend to call him like my favorite Korean author, is just because he goes to so many different places. Like no book is the same, and so depending on my mood I can kind of always find a Kimyongha book that I'm interested in. I'm sorry, we've got a typhoon coming in and so the light keeps changing. So I'm going to talk about my all-time favorite, and some people find it boring, so I will give that warning. Some people think it's boring, I don't. And it is Black Flower. This book is a historical fiction, and it talks about how in Korea there was this kind of mass exodus of people who were leaving Korea to find a better life and work opportunities and stuff like that. And sort of similar to how Chinese immigrants were, people would go to China and be like, oh my God, we can bring you to America and you're gonna have this great life. And then they come and they work in these horrible conditions on the railroads. That happened in Korea, except it was Mexico that they went to. And so there were just these thousands of people who got on boats and went to Mexico thinking, oh my God, we're gonna have this great life. And they get pretty much sold into indentured servitude, and they work on these massive farms, and that's their life, and they can never really get to a place where they can buy their freedom, etc. I just thought it was so interesting, mainly because growing up, I live very close to the Mexican border, so a lot of our history, I mean, California, a lot of it where I lived used to be Mexico, so there was a big tie into kind of Mexican history that I'm kind of familiar with, but then there's also this Korean history that I'm versed in, and I never heard about it on either side. And so I just found it really interesting. It talks a lot about religion as well, and the power of language and stuff like that. So I do agree that it's a little slow, but I just thought that the actual subject matter was so interesting because I had never read it before. And so if you are interested in that, either in Mexican history or Korean history or both, definitely, I would say definitely give it a try. I thought that his writing style was exactly what I wanted it to be for that kind of story. It's not really like fast-paced or anything, but I just really loved it. So definitely give it a try. It is Black Flower by Kimyongha. But like I said, nothing he writes is ever the same. So my second recommendation, this one is very dark. This is a obviously short story. It's called I Have the Right to Destroy Myself. And this is one of these books that like I can't really tell you what it's about because I'm not even really sure. It's about two brothers. It's about suicide. I mean, it's very dark, and it just kind of talks about life in Korean society. He's really interested in kind of like the untold stories, the kind of underbelly stories. So again, very, very dark, but it talks about walks of life that I've never even thought about here in Korea. I think one of the brothers is like an express taxi driver. So he like drives people from Seoul to Busan, which is like a 4-ish hour drive, but he drives really fast. And so he gets them there in like 2 hours. Like it's just, So I would say very, very dark, but it's really short and quite engaging. So, and it has like he has some beautiful lines. So I would definitely. Oh, what? Oh my God, this is a ticket to a theme park that was Kurt and my like first date. Oh my God. Okay, so anyway, that Kurt and I both love him, so that makes sense of why it's in here. But yeah, Kimyongha. Also by him, just really quickly, because these aren't the ones that I remember super well, but he has Your Republic is Calling You, which is about a North Korean spy living in South Korea, which is so interesting. And then also I Hear Your Voice, which I think is one of Kurt's favorites, and it's about these kids who are orphaned and they kind of join this like motorcycle gang in Seoul. Again, it's just kind of like these sort of unseen, unheard groups of people in Seoul. And so, but yeah, I think that his writing, it isn't very flowery. It's a little bit matter of fact, but then something about that, like he just comes up with some of these lines that are so simple, but just kind of hit you really hard. So I just really appreciate his writing. I appreciate his subject matter. I appreciate all the different things that he talks about in his work. And he's also like very active in the writing world. Like he's on TV all the time and he does like commentary on things. So he's just like an interesting character in general. So I highly recommend checking out Kimyongha. Just kind of pick whichever book sounds the most interesting to you and start there, because you're not gonna get the same feeling every time. So Kimyongha. Next up, oh my God, I talked about this book in my last reading wrap up. This is The Hen Who Dreamed She Could Fly. It is by Sunmi Hwang. This book is so sad. Oh my God. So The Hen Who Dreamed She Could Fly is about a hen who is at a farm and she is meant to just lay eggs to be eaten. She never actually has a chick. She's unable to have a chick. And she doesn't understand that, obviously, and so her main goal in life is to escape the coop, live in the yard with the other animals, and raise a chick. And so it's really all about, it follows her entire life, and it's pretty much all about like a mother's love and like what lengths mothers will go to. Yeah, it's just sad. But actually Kurt is the one who recommended this to me. He was really touched by this story, and so this is Kurt's addition to this video. It was very quick to read, but yeah, just really touching. It's been, I mentioned this in my other video, but it's been a long time since I've read a book where all of the characters are animals, and it, at first I thought like, oh, I'm not gonna like it, but it was still so touching, and the end, it left me with a lot to think about. So definitely, if you're looking for something quick, if you're interested in the topics of like love and motherhood and stuff like that, The Hen Who Dreamed She Could Fly was really excellent. And someone said that she has written more books since this has come out, so I will also link down below if she has anything else. But yeah, Sunmi Hwang, Sunmi, The Hen Who Dreamed She Could Fly. After that, I think, is one that you all know very well. It is by Cho Nam Ju. It is Jiyoung Born. I always say in the wrong year. Born in 1982. I always say 1985. This one I've talked about before. I did it in my Namjoon reads video. It is very appropriately just about a woman who was born in 1982, and it follows her life. And I mentioned it when I was talking about when I first read it, that this book was so ordinary. Like, if you've lived in Korea and you know women, like even women who were born in the 90s, the way that life progresses for women here, there's very much like milestones that you set. And it, even for men too, but like very specifically for women, there's just like this kind of roadmap that you're expected to follow, but also there's so many horrible obstacles and things that you have to go through, especially if you were born in the 80s, but it's still continuing now. I just thought that it was like a very ordinary story, and I think that that's why it resonated with so many people, because it was a huge bestseller in Korea. And I think the reason why it resonated with people in Korea is because we often have people writing stories about like extraordinary women, like these heroes, and they went through so much and they did something like really out of the norm. And to have a story about a woman who was absolutely the norm was kind of groundbreaking, and it made people feel really seen. And it kind of, to put that on paper as a record and have it be so accurate and so sad was, I think, really important that it was written. So for me, it wasn't like a totally gripping book because, like I said, it was just this woman's very normal, frustrating life as like a going from an adolescent to a mother in Korean society. But I think that it was an immensely important book, and I think it is good to read to really understand what women went through and are still going through here. Because some of it is really like quintessentially Korean, and then I think that there are obviously larger themes that kind of all women can relate to. So I would definitely recommend it. Jiyoung Born in 1982. I have not watched was it a film or a drama? I didn't watch that, but definitely recommend the book, and that is by Cho Nam Ju. After that, I kind of want to buy this book simply because it has a really cool cover for one of its editions. But this is Love in the Big City by Sang-young Park. This book was a good time. It wasn't my favorite, but it is simply about this young gay man living in the big city, living in Seoul, and just navigating their life, living with roommates, falling in love, having a friend group, etc. And I just thought, I think Sang-young Park is maybe born like the same time as me, because throughout it he referenced a lot of K-pop that was like my era, and so it just felt almost like a friend was kind of telling me this story and taking me on this ride. It was filled with a lot of sadness, a lot of joy. It's interesting because Korea as like mainstream media compared to places like the US is still very, very conservative. And so having literature written by an openly gay man about a gay man is still pretty groundbreaking even in like 2020s. So it was something that I hadn't really read before, and so it was really cool to read that, how he navigates and sort of, again, that piece of society that you don't always see, especially not represented in, like I said, mainstream media. So it was very short. I thought it was told in a couple different stories, if I remember, and I felt like a couple of them got a little too long, but overall, I thought that the subject matter was really interesting. So maybe that might be a book that you can read a little bit more slowly, because like I said, I like to read books in one shot. So I think that's why I got a little tired of the writing style. But if you kind of pace yourself, I thought that I had never read anything like it before. So definitely check it out. It is Love in the Big City by Sangyoung Park. After that, Cursed Bunny. Oh my god, this is Cursed Bunny by Bora Chung. And what a weird little collection this was. Korean writing that is translated to English, because newsflash, not everything gets translated into English, so Korean literature has everything you can imagine. It's just what ends up getting translated, which is a whole nother discussion. But the work that's translated into English is usually incredibly dark. I mean, for example, we're going to talk a little bit more about another dark thing. This was disturbing. This is a collection of short stories. Like I said, it's by Bora Chung. It's translated by Anton Her. Almost every short story had to deal with bodily fluids, specifically like poop. So it was almost a little bit difficult for me to read because I kept focusing on that. I don't think that this was necessarily my cup of tea, but if you are interested in like the inner workings of Korean society, I thought that it did have a really interesting way of looking into that and talking about also just like your inner workings as a person. So I will say that the themes that are brought up here are really, I was very interested in them, but I was kind of turned off by how much like feces and like menstrual blood and stuff like that were kind of thrown in there. I would say give it a try if you're able to kind of stomach those things. I just found it, for me, a little distracting. But yeah, that is Cursed Bunny by Bora Chung. Speaking of short stories, the next author I want to talk about is Choi Eunyoung, who wrote Shokos Smile. I'm sure you guys have heard of this. This is a pretty like recently buzzed about collection of short stories, and I was not expecting it to be as sad as it was, especially because Smile is in the title. I don't know. But yeah, I read the first story in like a public place. I was in a cafe and I had to just kind of sit there and be like, oh. I personally enjoyed Choi Eunyoung's style of writing a little bit more than Bora Chung if you're trying to jump into Korean short story collections. I will say though that like the topics are still very dark and sad. This just felt a little bit, I don't know, it felt like a friend was kind of telling you this horrible story, versus like Bora Chung felt a little borderline like horror. So I would definitely recommend, like if you're just starting out, try with Shokos Smile. But yeah, I would definitely just be aware that each story is gonna kind of hit you in a way that you didn't expect. So maybe don't read it in public while it's the first day of your period and you're super emotional. Maybe think about that. So, and next up is one of my favorite authors again, which is Han. You definitely should already know about her by now. I first read her work with The Vegetarian, which actually won an award for its translation. Yeah, I read The Vegetarian. I think I read it in about one sitting, and it definitely reminded me of like a dark Haruki Murakami feeling, and you guys know that I really enjoy Murakami, so that's how I kind of very easily slid into her writing, is that it felt familiar but also a little bit more gruesome. So The Vegetarian follows a woman. I don't want to give too much away, but it's basically about family, being a woman, mental health, and I just remember eating it up. It just really struck me. It's a very short book as well, so if you are interested in, if you can handle darker topics and kind of like, not fantastical, but definitely a little more like dreamy feeling, like it felt very surreal, I would definitely go for The Vegetarian. But if you're more interested in kind of a historical background, a couple years later, after having read The Vegetarian, I picked up Human Acts, and I will say that I read Human Acts once. I tried to get into it and I couldn't, and then just I was trying to make that Namjoon reads video and I read it again, and I was like knocked on my ass. Like there is a POV change that I still think about and it like took my breath away. And whew, so Human Acts takes place with the backdrop of the Gwangju uprising in the 80s. There was this massive uprising started with students and kind of spread to the whole city, protesting the dictatorship, and it got very violent. The dictator sent in the military. Many people died. It was chaos. And this follows kind of a bunch of different people, but most of them are students. They were the young people during this movement, and it kind of flashes to that time when it was going on, but it also goes to 20-30 years later when these people are adults. And it was just so moving. I think it might be a little confusing if you don't know anything about the uprising, but I still think it was just, God, the way that she wrote some things was just incredible, and I highly recommend it. If you read The Vegetarian, I don't think her writing is anything like, they're totally two different authors. I mean, it was totally unexpected. I think that's kind of why I put Human Acts off for a little bit, is that I didn't know if I could do like a kind of surreal historical fiction, but this was absolutely, there is definitely some like kind of a dreaminess aspect to it. But so please, if you are interested in Korean history, especially if you know anything about the Gwangju uprising, please read this book. It was just so moving, and even to the very last page, like just heart-wrenching. Gives you a totally different perspective of what happened. And she captured a lot of the really quiet moments. I think I mentioned this before, but when we hear about uprisings and revolutions and stuff like that, we often hear about like the front lines and this kind of like action-packed thing, and there are these big heroes and good and evil, and this was just like very quiet. And a lot of it takes place in where they're burying the dead, or they're having people identify dead bodies. So it's not like there is eventually a lot of action, but so much of it is just kind of sitting with what has happened. And I just, the things that she chose to focus on were just incredible. So Human Acts by Hwang Sok, please read. And last but not least, I still haven't finished this book. To be honest, it's taken me a while to get into it. This is Tower by Bae Myunghoon, and it is a science fiction collection of short stories, but it's all about this tower. It is a skyscraper that's like 600 something stories high, so it ends up being considered its own sovereign nation, basically. And it just goes into life and society within this kind of tower. The first story is what took me quite a while to get into, but it definitely tells you what this is going to be about. The first story, without spoilers, is about this like researcher who wants to understand like the power flow within this nation, and so he like GPS tracks all of these gifts. So especially in Korea, kind of everywhere, but especially in Korea, not necessarily bribery, but like, getting on people's good side, you typically give them a gift. It actually was recently made illegal to send flowers. It used to be a thing, I forget exactly what it was, but there was like, you could send these huge flower displays to people, and that was kind of the same as like a low-key bribe, It's a sign of your loyalty. I think it was right after the impeachment of Park Geun-hye. They made it illegal to use like florists in that way, and even the florists were like, yeah, honestly, we're down, like we would rather have like a clean government than have this whatever going on. So it is like a kind of active topic in Korea of like the use of goods. It's not cash bribes, but like the use of like alcohol or buying them XYZ in order to like show loyalty or have somebody owe you a favor kind of thing. And so anyway, this researcher GPS tracks a bunch of alcohol to see like who sends it where, and to figure out like the social structure of this tower. But of course the research ends up showing something interesting and maybe people are corrupt, and I don't know. So like this is one that I'm gonna take very slowly because, like I said, the first story took me a really long time to get into, but I do think that the writing is actually quite funny. The dialogue is actually, there's like a lot of, I don't know, irony and sarcasm and stuff that I don't normally see in like the translated work that I've read. So I am enjoying it. It's just one of those that should definitely be a slower read. So if you're interested in kind of like a sci-fi futuristic, it feels very dystopian already, that is Tower by Bae Myunghoon, and I believe he has a new book out recently. So there you go. I feel like I'm gonna get in trouble if I don't mention Kyungsook Shin Kyungsook, because she wrote Please Look After Mom. She also wrote The Court Dancer and Violets. She's written a lot, and this is totally just my issue, but she actually got in trouble with Please Look After Mom for plagiarism, and she had to apologize, and like this, it was this whole big thing. Even though I liked Please Look After Mom, I know it's just something that like I have to get over. Like she is a really great writer, and it was unfortunate that that happened. But yeah, I will definitely, I know I want to read Violets, but it's one of those things where I have so many things that I want to read, and I just keep kind of putting her off because I'm sort of like, you know? So I do in the future want to read Violets, especially if you haven't read Please Look After Mom. I would recommend it. But that's just the reason why she wasn't like on the top of my list, is that I still have kind of an issue with that, and I wish I didn't, because she does have some incredibly beautiful work. So that is also Shin Kyungsook Shin. You can check her out as well. On my list that I was trying to read but I didn't get a chance to, there is Hwang Sok Young, who has a book called At Dusk. There's Hyoseok, Endless Blue Sky, and Soho, Cat Calling. Haven't read any of those, and I really want to. I tried to read The Plotters by I'll put it here. Couldn't get into it, and I really wish that I did. There are so many books that are on my list that I just haven't gotten to. So this definitely isn't the be all end all list, but I hope that I gave you a couple that you can check out. I also want to recommend, I think I got this on, there is a bookmark in here that says facebook.com/historybooks.kr, but I know I didn't buy it from a Facebook group. So I think I actually got this from Thrift Books, even though it doesn't say on here. But there is this collection, Library of Korean Literature. This is the 9th one, I believe. And so these are works that I have kind of only seen published through the Library of Korean Literature, but this is a collection of short stories by Park Wan-Suh. It's called Lonesome You. There are a bunch of these. I have another one somewhere. But yeah, if you're interested in more like short stories or literary fiction and stuff like that, I would definitely look up this. The translator is Elizabeth Haejin Yu. Yeah, it's a series published in cooperation with the Literature Translation Institute of Korea. They published 25 Korean novels and short story collections in a single year. So basically just also look this up. I'll try and find more information and put it down below as well. But the Library of Korean Literature has a lot of translated Korean work if you'd like to check that out. So anyway, that was just kind of my thrown together list of Korean authors that I really love. I'm going to try and get into, there have been so many recently that have been translated, so I'm going to try and kind of get back into that, especially since I'm living here. I feel like I have extra access maybe, I don't know. So yeah, I hope that you found something that maybe tickled your fancy, and I will try and update this again when I have finally finished my TBR. So thank you again to Surfshark VPN for sponsoring this. All the information will be down below, but you can use my code CariCanRead to get 83% off, along with 3 extra months free, and there's a 30-day no questions asked money back guarantee. So yeah, I will talk to you guys later. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm going to be traveling a bunch in October, so I'm going to try and schedule some things for you. But in case I miss a week of posting, I apologize, but I'm going back to America to see my family. I'm very excited. So yeah, I'm also going to see My Chemical Romance. So I will catch you guys when I see you. Thank you always, and let me know if there were authors that I didn't mention. Definitely let me know down below and make my list even longer. Okay, so see you later. Bye.